Hi, my name's Lexi. I'm a first year ordinand here at St Mellitus North West on the Christian Leadership MA course, and I'm excited to be bringing you the Lent reflection for today. Our reading comes from John chapter 6 verses 1 to 15, and it's Jesus feeding the 5,000. After Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias, a large crowd kept following him because they saw signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we going to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he knew himself what he was going to do. Philip answered, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. I feel as though I've shot myself in the foot a bit here, as when signing up to do this, I didn't really take much notice of what the readings were, but looked more at the dates to see which one would be the most convenient in terms of creating time to be able to do the reflection. Of course, I came, sat down, and actually read the reading, and it's the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, which is arguably one of the most well-known of Jesus' miracles. I then panicked at how on earth I was going to be able to bring some new thought or way of thinking into such a well-known passage, and ultimately freaked out I was going to make an absolute numpty of myself in front of such an accomplished group of people. So I went away and prayed and tried to discern what God wanted me to say in this reflection, and asked him to open my eyes to a new way of thinking at this passage and give me something different to talk about. As a few days went by, there was a word that kept going round and round in my head, and this word stuck with me, and I went to sleep with it going round in my head, and similarly would wake up and the same word again would be going round in my head. That word being provision. I think sometimes as preachers we feel so much pressure to constantly think of something new and different to say, especially when we're given familiar passages to preach on. But that doesn't have to be the case at all. Sometimes it's good to go back to these well-known stories and simply remind ourselves that what Jesus did back then is still true of what he continues to do for us today. In this story, Jesus provides for all those that came to listen to him. He was able to feed them by turning a few loaves and fishes into a bountiful feast, not only enough for everyone to eat and be full, but with plenty left over. For me, during this difficult and such unusual time, it's the familiar stories that I keep coming back to. It's like a source of comfort. But I also think God is trying to tell me and remind me that he is there to provide for me as much today as he did on the day when Jesus fed 5,000 people. Now, not only is this a physical sense of provision, but a spiritual provision too. A renewing of being filled with the Spirit and a desire to keep that fire lit with passion to tell everyone how loved they are as children of the highest King. So, if you get a chance today, have a stop and think about where God has previously provided for you, and also an area where you could ask God to come in and fill it with provision. For me, I look back at this whole reflection process and see God's endless provision throughout the time I've spent praying, writing, and now recording this reflection. And now I'm praying for Jesus to provide you with whatever it is that you need to help you to draw closer to him. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope and pray wherever and whatever you're doing, you stay safe and know that you're so, so loved.